Timeless life philosophies.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled, convincing the world he didn't exist, but perhaps the second greatest, making us believe he's the good guy. For a lot of people, the devil is nothing more than a character from religious stories, a figure used to scare us into behaving. But is he just a fictional boogeyman, or is there more to this symbol? When we look deeper, not at religious dogma, but through the lens of psychology, we find that the concept of the devil or evil holds far more relevance in our lives than we might think. It's not about hellfire and brimstone. It's about the choices we make and the darker aspects of our own psyche. Before we go any further, let's make one thing clear. This isn't about promoting any religious belief. We're exploring the psychological underpinnings of what the devil represents, the archetype of chaos and evil. Think of it as a force that stands in opposition to order and goodness. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist, described archetypes as ancient, universal patterns of behavior. We all have them. They're part of our collective unconscious. The devil, as a symbol of evil, is one of these patterns. But what does it mean for us personally? The archetype of chaos and evil, what the devil really represents. The devil, in a psychological sense, isn't just a symbol of evil, but also chaos, disorder, and destruction. This archetype goes beyond religious teachings, deeply embedded in the collective human psyche. It represents the parts of us that want to break away from rules, disrupt harmony, and create chaos. But here's the thing, chaos isn't always bad. Sometimes it's necessary for growth. Think about moments in your life when everything fell apart, only for things to get better afterward. That's the archetype of chaos at work. The devil represents this in its most extreme form, when chaos overwhelms and disrupts everything in its path. In mythology and psychology, the devil isn't just a villain. He's a symbol of rebellion, defiance, and unchecked ambition. These aren't necessarily bad qualities on their own, but when taken to extremes, they lead to chaos and destruction. In our own lives, we experience these forces as temptation and desire. Maybe it's the urge to cut corners at work, cheat on a test, or indulge in things we know aren't good for us. The devil archetype whispers, "Why not? You deserve this." No one will know. The devil archetype doesn't appear as a monster, but rather as a voice inside us, pushing us toward indulgence and self-sabotage. It's the part of us that's impatient, that wants immediate gratification, regardless of the long-term consequences. But chaos, as destructive as it can be, is also a catalyst for change. Sometimes we need to let things fall apart to build something better. That's the paradox of the devil archetype. It represents both destruction and the potential for new growth. By understanding this, we gain insight into our own behavior and the chaotic forces at play in our lives. The evolution of evil, how different cultures understood chaos. Throughout history, every culture has developed its own version of the devil or chaos figure, from Babylonian mythology to Hinduism and beyond. The concept of chaos and evil has played a crucial role in explaining the human condition. These archetypes didn't just represent evil for evil's sake. They were often symbols of disorder, the unknown, and the forces that stand in opposition to the structure and harmony of life. However, these myths also show us that chaos isn't something to fear, but something that must be understood and integrated. Take the Babylonian creation myth, where Tiamat, a primordial goddess of the ocean, symbolizes chaos. Her defeat by Marduk, the god of order, leads to the creation of the world. This isn't just about good triumphing over evil, but rather the necessary role that chaos plays in the creation of order. Without chaos, there's no creativity, no change, no progress. Similarly, in Egyptian mythology, Apophis, the serpent of chaos, continually battles with Ra, the sun god. Every night, the universe hangs in balance as Ra fights off Apophis, ensuring the sun rises once more. This eternal battle between light and darkness reflects our internal struggles between order and chaos. In Hinduism, we see the asuras, forces of chaos, and devas, forces of order, battling not as strict opposites but as complementary forces. Both exist within us, and both are necessary. The goal in many Eastern philosophies is not to eliminate chaos, but to balance it with order, to find harmony between the two. This is a key lesson. The devil archetype, or the force of chaos, isn't something to be eradicated but understood and managed. It's part of the duality of life, reminding us that without darkness, we wouldn't recognize the light. Chaos and order, a symbiotic relationship. The devil archetype teaches us that chaos and order are two sides of the same coin. We often think of chaos as purely destructive and order as inherently good. But if we dig deeper, we find that the two are interdependent. You can't have one without the other. Chaos is what drives change. Without it, life would be static and predictable. Order, on the other hand, gives structure and meaning to that chaos. The balance between the two is where growth happens. Take a look at your own life. Have you ever experienced a moment where everything seemed to fall apart? Maybe you lost a job, went through a breakup, or faced a significant personal setback. In the moment, it felt like pure chaos. But looking back, wasn't it that very chaos that forced you to grow, to adapt, and to rebuild? That's the devil archetype at work. It represents the breakdown of the old to make way for the new. This idea of chaos and order being interconnected is present in various philosophical and spiritual teachings. In Taoism, for example, the yin and yang symbolize this duality. Chaos, yin, and order, yang, are not enemies but complementary forces. Together they create balance. The Tao, or the ultimate principle of the universe, transcends both and unites them. In our lives, we often try to avoid chaos at all costs. We crave stability and predictability, but the truth is, we need chaos to push us out of our comfort zones. When we embrace this duality, we stop fearing the unknown. Instead of seeing chaos as something to avoid, we can view it as an opportunity for transformation. The devil, as an archetype of chaos, reminds us that destruction and creation are part of the same process. The devil within, confronting our shadow. Here's where it gets personal. The devil archetype isn't just about external forces of chaos and evil. It's about the chaos and evil within each of us. Carl Jung coined the term shadow to describe the parts of ourselves we repress or deny. The devil, in many ways, is a representation of that shadow. It's the part of us that's driven by selfish desires, jealousy, anger, and pride. It's the part of us that we'd rather not acknowledge. But here's the catch. The more we try to suppress the shadow, the stronger it becomes. Think about it like this. Imagine trying to hold a beach ball underwater. The harder you push it down, the more forcefully it pops back up. That's exactly how our shadow works. If we don't confront it, it shows up in unexpected and often destructive ways. Ever snapped at someone over something small, only to realize later that your reaction was more about your own issues than theirs? That's your shadow at play. The devil archetype teaches us an important lesson. We can't ignore the darker parts of ourselves. We need to confront them, understand them, and integrate them into our lives. This doesn't mean giving in to destructive impulses. Instead, it means acknowledging that they exist and finding healthy ways to express them. By doing this, we prevent our shadow from taking over and controlling our behavior. Integrating the shadow isn't easy. It requires self-awareness, honesty, and a willingness to face uncomfortable truths about ourselves. But it's the only way to truly grow. The devil, as a symbol of our shadow, reminds us that darkness isn't something to be feared. It's something to be understood. Only by confronting it can we achieve balance and harmony within ourselves. Pride, the downfall of angels and humans alike. Pride is often considered the root of all evil, and it's easy to see why. It's not the healthy kind of pride that comes from knowing your worth or taking satisfaction in your achievements. It's the toxic kind, the arrogance that makes us believe we're better than others, above the rules, or untouchable. In nearly every story about the devil, pride plays a central role. Take Lucifer, for example. In Christian mythology, he was once the most beautiful and powerful of angels. But his pride led him to rebel against God, believing he could take the throne for himself. The result? He was cast out of heaven and became the devil, the very symbol of evil. The lesson here is clear. Pride leads to downfall. It blinds us to our flaws, makes us arrogant, and pushes us to act in ways that ultimately harm ourselves and others. But this kind of pride isn't just a religious concept. It's something we encounter in everyday life. How often have you seen someone refuse to admit they're wrong, even when it's obvious? Or witnessed someone hurt others in their pursuit of power or success, believing they're entitled to more than they deserve? That's pride at work. We've all experienced moments when our pride got the best of us. Maybe it was in a relationship where we refused to apologize, even though we knew we were wrong. Or perhaps at work, where we took credit for something we didn't entirely earn. Pride whispers in our ear, telling us we deserve more, that we're above the rules, that we don't need anyone's help. But in the end, it only leads to isolation, conflict, and, like Lucifer, a fall from grace. The antidote to pride is humility. It's about recognizing that while we have strengths, we also have weaknesses. It's about understanding that we're not better than anyone else, and that true strength comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down. When we embrace humility, we disarm the devil's most potent weapon, our own ego. The devil's tools: temptation and deception. One of the devil's most powerful tools is deception. But unlike the blatant lies we might expect, the devil's deceptions are often subtle, wrapped in half-truths and tempting promises. Do what makes you happy, the voice whispers. No one will get hurt. You deserve it. It sounds appealing, right? But here's the thing. Those temptations often come with hidden consequences. In psychological terms, temptation is about immediate gratification, choosing what feels good in the moment, regardless of the long-term cost. It's the devil on your shoulder, urging you to take the shortcut, to give in to your desires. But as many of us have learned the hard way, shortcuts rarely lead where we want to go. They might feel good initially, but they often leave us worse off in the long run. The devil's deceptions aren't just about personal temptations. They can also be societal. Think about the messages we're bombarded with every day. Success means wealth. Happiness comes from having more. You don't need anyone. Be your own boss. These ideas play into our deepest desires for power, control, and independence. But at what cost? When we chase these ideals, we often end up disconnected from the things that truly matter: relationships, community, purpose. Recognizing the devil's deceptions is about seeing through the immediate appeal and understanding the bigger picture. It's about asking yourself, is this really what I want? Or am I being led astray by my desires? The devil's lies are powerful because they play on our deepest insecurities and cravings. But by staying mindful and grounded in our values, we can resist temptation and make choices that align with our true selves.